Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you so much for confirming me. And let's see that before I start the session, I want you people to, uh, confirm me if you can hear me properly. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can you can put a question in the chat box, but do not unmute yourself in between. It creates quite confuse and disturbance to me while talking. Okay, fine. So let's look into that. What is the emerging trends in the clinical research which are creating the implications for the pharmaceutical industry? If you look into the clinical trials, which started almost a decade ago, and so not centuries ago, like in almost 100 years back, and the change that we seen in the clinical research somewhat different before COVID, and it is totally different after COVID. Okay, because not only the way we conduct the clinical trials, not only the way we are collecting the data, not only we are asking the patient to participate in the clinical trials, but every aspect, even the career aspects, everything has changed because the technology is changing day by day. And please unmute yourself. Sorry, please mute yourself, please. And along with the technology, there is also that every pharmaceutical company is looking forward to how do we create a better medications in faster time and in very effective way. So the drug that we are releasing into the market should have a safety and the efficacy and should be faster delivery, not only for the money, but to create a trend in the clinical research that how best we can deliver our medicinal products. So let's see that some of the aspects of it and that. So what is the basics of the clinical research? The basics of the clinical research is that you do the clinical trial in the sample population, like 100 people, from 100 to 3,000 people, and the product approval in the entire population. If you look into the COVID vaccination that we have seen, and you know that the COVID created a lot of impact on the everyone's life, and within 8 months or the 10 months, Bharat Biotech has launched a product that is a vaccination and it released into the market. If you look into the how this vaccination developed is that they did the clinical trial on the 40,000 people, but the same vaccination, once it is released into the market, it has taken by crores, 100 of crores. Entire India has taken them this same vaccination, and this same vaccination has been given to many other countries. And so that's what we say that we do the clinical trial in the sample populations, but the product will be approved in the entire populations. So that's what about the clinical trial is about. And so let's see that what is the clinical trial. Everyone think that before I talk the trends or before I do inform you about what is happening in the clinical research, you should be knowing about what is the clinical research. A clinical trial is a tool for testing the drug, device, or any of the technique, like the way you give medication, the way you deliver the medications, or the way you do the surgery, or the way you use the certain instruments. All is called the way we test is the clinical trials. So the guiding the principles for the last many years, on the last few centuries or a few decades, we have seen many tragedies in the clinical research that we want to discuss on. Because before I talk something more and more, you need to know the basics. In order to spell your name, in order to tell your name, you need to know what is the. My voice is not working. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Sir, you are audible only.
Okay, thank you. So the guiding principles that we have here is the way we are conducting a clinical trial should be ethical clinical trial. and the scientific validity and the integrity should be there, and the medical relevance and regulatory medical legal issues should be considering as a principles, and the way we are costing the human being with the charges and the cost. Now let's look into that. What is the clinical trials? The clinical research is a study of the health and illness in the people, and we are learning how do we prevent, diagnosis and the treat illness. So see, if we look into that, how do we prevent, how do we diagnosis, how do we treat illness? So these three parameters giving an opportunity for us, how do we change the entire the clinical trial trends? Because we every year, if you look into that, in 2012, we were using the paper case report forms. In order to update the patient reports form, we were updating in the paper. Now we got the technology that is the electronic data capture. Few years back, you go to the hotel and eat food and come order, call them and give the order. But now we have an apps like Zomato, Swiggy, all this. That means the technology is being changed. However, along with the technology changes, it is also giving an opportunity in the career perspective, and it is also changed the pharma industry based on. However, no matter how much they change, the basics are the learning on how to prevent, how to diagnose and the treat illness. And just please mute yourself. And simply put, it involves the human participations and help the translate the basic research. So now where the clinical trial happens? The clinical trial happens on the research epidemiology, physiology, and the pathophysiology, and the health services, educations, and the outcomes. So what is the broader spectrum of the research? Where exactly it's starting? Before I know that, before I talk about the clinical research, we need to know that what exactly, how this clinical trial happens. One is that first way you do that, we do the target selection. Once we target selection means what? Now, for example, my target of audience people is the pharmacy people or medical education people. That means the who can understand better. If I talk about this clinical research to someone who don't know medical education, who don't have a medical education, may get a doubt. What is he talking? But since you have a medical education background, you'll understand that what is the target selection, or what is the clinical research, or what is the rats, what is the chemistry, what is the discovery, and you'll be able to understand that. So that means first we do the selection of the certain population, nothing but the molecule where I should work on. For example, if I want to work on the glucose, higher glucose, or if I want to work on the cancer medications, now I need to know that where exactly the cancer is coming from, which marker or which cell is giving the cancerous cell. That we will do that. Then they will do the synthesis. I think you already know that ELISA methods and all. So we will be working on the ELISA and the assay development. And again they will go to the medical chemistry. Then they will look into the vitro studies and the in vivo study. In vivo study means doing the clinical trials in the animals and understand that how much medication to give or what is the safe way to give the medications. Then they will go to the clinical trials and the therapeutics. What is this clinical trials? What is the research trial happens? Because the clinical research usually takes a lot of time. If you look into that, from the drug discovery, finding the molecule till the phase 4, it is almost takes 10 years. Sometimes it's more than 10 years. There are trials which are happening for the 15 years. There are clinical trials which can complete within the 4 or 5 years. So let's see that what is the drug discovery, target selection, finding the molecule and the optimization and the pharmacology profiling. Then the preclinical development happens in the animals, where they will understand about the toxicology, where they will understand about the how
side on the road of the ಈಗ ಬಸ್ಸಿನ ತೆಳಗೆ ಐತಿಲ್ಲ.
ಇದು ಬೆನಸ್ವಿಕ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಮುಂದನ ಹೋಟೆಲ್ ಹೋದ.
Yes, don't unmute, no, please. So the pharmacokinetics and the short-term toxicology, and then they'll look into that. How do we do the clinical trials? Now, here they will give the IND, that is the investigational new drug application. So by understanding that, how much? So before it used to take 5 years, 4 years preclinical. Now it is taking the 1.5 years because technology has changed a lot. The technology has been changed a lot. Now the laboratory evolution happened so much, like in ELISA methods, like a technology on the map, that is a monoclonal antibodies. Now, then they will start with the phase 1 to look into that, or to talk about the pharmacokinetics, tolerability, side effects, health volunteers. That means what is the absorption rate? What is the distribution rate? What is the metabolism rate? What is the excretion rate? And what kind of side effects that we will be seeing in the phase 1 in the patients. Then they will, once the patients give the enough understanding on the clinical phase 1, they will look into the phase 2. That is a small scale trials in the patient to look into the efficacy and the how much dose to be given. That means the dose you are giving, the 5 mg, whether it's effective or not. So that's maybe you will get doubt. See, I'm taking the medication for the paracetamol or any medication that we are seeing. It is not just coming from the lab. It's not coming from the pharmacy. After doing the clinical trials for years and years and years, the drug is coming to the pharmacy. That means from the laboratory pharmacy, it is taking the almost 10 years. That means you see that how effectively they are working on it. Now, I'm saying that it takes 10 years, but with the new technology, with the new trends, with the new modifications, the drug is coming into the market very easily. But however, if you look into that, in the drug discovery, they will identify the 10 molecules. And out of 10 molecule, 100 molecule, at the phase 4, there is only one molecule would be coming to the market. That means the success rate is very less because of the huge time, because of the certain populations, and also because of the long length that in the clinical trials, because the patient have to come to the hospital. Let me give an example to you. Okay, we'll see the examples in the next slide. And let's see that what is the phase 3. Here we do again look into the safety, efficacy. Then they'll ask for the regulatory approval. Then once they get an approval then they will do the post-marketing surveillance. That means, is there any adverse event that we are looking into that in the long term? That we will be looking into that. So this is how it happens. The clinical trials, the story here, the research, the trials happens, every out of 10,000 compounds, and preclinical comes to that 250 compounds, and 5 compounds means 5 molecules will be doing for the clinical trials. Out of that, only one drug released into the market because the success rate is very less in the clinical research. You are testing on the 10,000 compounds, but out of that, only 250 molecules are coming to the preclinical, that is the animal testing. Out of 250, 245 are failing to prove the safety and the no toxic effects. Only 5 compounds are coming to the clinical trials, phase 1, 2, 3, 4. And FDA review happens, and only one molecule will get the approval into the market. You see that how many years it is taking. To find the till 5 compound, it's taking the 6.5 years. Then after that, again it takes the 7 years. That means total almost minimum 10 years. So where is the clinical trial first happened? In May 20th, International Clinical Trials Day, which is started by the James Lin, who did the first ever clinical trial for the scurvy. So what happens in the phase 1? The first stage of the testing in human subjects are and designed to assess the safety. You all know that. I believe that you all know what is the safety. Safety means there is no side effects. I think you already know that what was the common side effects that we are seeing in the once we took the vaccination, the fever. So fever was the most common adverse event that we seen in the after taking the COVID vaccination. So that is the safety and that is the side effects. Now tolerability, how well the patient will be able to take the medication, and the pharmacokinetics. If you are from the medical back, that is a pharmacy background, you know what it is pharmacokinetics. Pharmacokinetics is nothing but administration, distribution, excretion, and the metabolism. So all these things will be looked into the phase 1. So there are how many patients we consider here? We consider 200 to 100 volunteers. And so mainly this clinical trial happens in the cancers, HIV, and other therapeutic areas like arthritis or ophthalmology, all this. So now my question is now that what do I need to have? The preclinical data, that is an animal study, and after that there is one document called investigational new drug applications. So how the phase 2 happens? Phase 2 is to review the phase 1 data, and once they review the data, they will be looking into the safety and the efficacy here. Now, the phase 3, the therapeutic confirmatory trials, large scales, where they add 300 to 3,000 patients, which takes up to 5 years. What are the objectives? To assess overall and the relative therapeutic value of the new drug. The drug we are trying to do the clinical trials, and to determine that how much medication we should be giving to the patient. And the next one is that how do we perform the clinical trials in the certain population will be decided in that. And after that, they'll also do the post-marketing surveillance studies. That means after even drug release into the market, they will do that. How many adverse events are that the patients are getting? What is the safety profile of the particular drug? So that means if you look at one of the example that on September 30, 2004, Merck, one of the leading company in the world, withdraw one of the drug from the market because of the concerns about increased risk of the heart attack and the stroke associated with the long term. That means by doing the long term, we came to that is giving the serious advantage. So now, by looking into that, we'll understand that, oh my God, the clinical trials are so much. The clinical trials are very tough. The clinical trials are taking very long term. Yes, the clinical trials are taking a very long term. But however, not only trends have changed how many clinical trials we are doing in the world, but also the rules that we have in the way we are conducting the clinical trials. The syphilis study, which happened in the Tuskegee in US between 1932 and 1972. And what happened here? There was a tragedy happened where unethical clinical trial happened. Unethical means here they have taken the black people for the clinical trials. You might think, what happens if they take the black people? Yes, they can take, but they have only taken the black people, not the white people. So that means the unethics. You're considering the black people because low economic and the poor people. That is the reason that. Now what happened? The US president had to apologize to the entire nation that for doing the clinical trials with the unethical. And one more thing, a problem here is that in 1947, penicillin was the drug of the choice, which not given to this subject. That means they have not given the medication, even there is a medications are available. So what is the next tragedy? By looking into the current clinical trials and by looking into the past, we'll understand that why the clinical trials are very important and why the clinical research department is one of the important department in the world, because the disease always increases. It never decreases. There will be new diseases will be coming to the people. So all they are doing is that understanding about each disease and making sure that delivering the product without any safety concerns to the patients. So what happened? The 1937, the elixir sulfonamide was using to the patients for the morning sickness. So what happened is that once they used that medication, it was good, but to give the flavor, now you see the some of the medication, if you take some of the tonics or anything, they will be very tasty because they're adding some of the enzymes, some of the flavor, some of the ingredients which give the taste to the patient, so that they will be interested to take the medications and all. And that is the reason that whenever there is an important requirement or whenever there is an information regarding the new ingredients, they will ask them to do the clinical trials. The sulfonamide is the first systematic antibiotics and which used to treat streptococcal. Fine. Then what happened? It killed almost 100 people. See, one thing I can tell you, dying with the disease unavoidable, but dying with the wrong medication unacceptable. So what happened in the 1946, the Nuremberg trials? The Nuremberg doctors trials, out of 23, 15 doctors found guilty in 1947 because they started doing the wrong clinical trials, this knowledge, to the different people, whoever is in the jails. So again, so you need to know the history, what exactly happened in the clinical trials, and when we do the clinical trials, what are the rules that we have in order to do the clinical trials, what are the protocols that you have, and why we are doing clinical trial very ethical principles. And if you look into the 1960, what happened that there is a drug which was giving for the for thalidomide, which was giving for the sleep inducing the drug monitoring sickness for the pregnant women. So now what happened? It resulted into horrific birth defects. And then regulatory team said, no, from now on what? We will be monitoring up every investigational drug application. And the strict criteria for how we are selecting the patients. No, Vaisa. Guys, am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, likewise, we have many issues. So these are maybe if you have pen and notes, you can take this one. So in the unethical clinical research, the sulfonamide trial happened. In the clinical research, Food and Drug Cosmetic Act happened. In Nazi's physician trial, Nuremberg Code. In thalidomide trial, Harris Amendment. In syphilis study, we have seen the National Research Act. Now you might think, sir, we are talking about the trends. We're talking about the pharma industry. Now why are you showing us the event? Because in order to see the trend, these are the things which made the trend in the history by making the mistakes. There was a mistake of the sulfonamide tragedy, the FDA came into the picture. Nazi physician trial, Nuremberg trial, the thalidomide tragedy, and the Harris Amendment. So all these things happen. All these things happen because there was a issue with the drugs what we manufacture. Now you see that means the drugs you prepare wrongly will have a lot of impact on the patient's life. Lot of people died, lot of people born with the birth defects and all. So that means the trends that we are seeing, that the evolution that we are seeing in the clinical research is something to do with the patient safety. No matter how technology you are using, no matter how different technology that you use, at the end, every government, every regulatory authority is only favor for the patient safety. So what is the current scenario in India? The trial registration, that is a CTRA, Clinical Trial Registry of India. That if you look into the current trend, that how many clinical trials were happened between 2005 to 13, but how many clinical trials are going to happening were happening for the last 6 years. You see that the number of the clinical trials that were happening so much, the way they are conducting the clinical trials. You see that how the clinical trials are happening that. So it took almost for 8 years, it took 20 there were almost 2200 clinical trials were registered, but in for the last 14 to 20, 2785 clinical trials reported. However, after COVID, it became so much because every company is ready to set up their calibration, the capability centers. Along with that, their clinical trials in India, because we have not only patient population, but also we have lot of patient population, lot of the experienced people like you, or the knowledge people like you, and who can understand that how the clinical trial should be conducted, and how do we make sure that patient is having the correct health. So what happened? The basic knowledge that what is that? The drug development process and the clinical trial phases, the designs, regulatory applicables, information technology, and the communication skills. So what is the trends in the clinical research? If you look into that, the global research and development market size and forecast, by 23, it becomes the 49 billions of the dollars of the spending that we have in the clinical trials. So in the clinical trials, in the 2018, it was 17. In 19, it became 21, and 20 it became the 26. However, there is a huge change after the COVID clinical trials. Sorry, after COVID. Why? Because every sponsor company is looking forward that how do we change, or how do we manufacture the drugs that we do not have the medication yet. And there are for many bacteria and viruses, there is no vaccination available. And so if you look into the number of the clinical trials is happening is so much each year, but it is also happening that the way the clinical trial is happening for the each year with the money, it is so much. That is almost $50 billion for the next in 1 year. By next year, we're gonna reach the $50. It is only spending, but however, when they're selling the medication, it's gonna cost so much to the patient. So in 2020, and the government sold almost $99.45 billion of the oncology drugs. But imagine that if you are like let's say that using a lot of technology, and you don't have to wait many months, but you can deliver the drug into the market very easily. So what are the options, the career opportunities you have? That is, you have CRAs, you have medical writing, you have clinical data management. There are n number of departments that only minimal we updated, but however, there are many opportunities that we have. So what are the changes that you are seeing? What are the changes, trends that we are seeing? That the change is that the case report form. So in terms of the way we are entering the paper, it has changed from the paper to electronic, and regulatory application from the paper to the e-submission. E-submission means no matter where you are in the world, you can always send to the certain regulatory team to ask for the approval. So that means again the master files. So in the clinical research departments, in the clinical CRO companies, the master files that is a paper and electronic team will be like so many people, because the way they are copying the documents, the way they are sending the documents depends on that how the clinical trial is happening. So what happens? What is happening in India now? India became the prime destination for the big pharma global clinical trial. Why? Because it became so that the trends that we are seeing, that the next 5 years there will be a number of clinical trials comes into the India only for the job perspective. But however, they are reaching out to the many hospitals if they are interested to conduct the clinical trials. So this is what the expectations that we have from the different clinical trial teams, clinical study teams, and the from the operations team. So now what happens that why they are saying the India's prime destination for the big pharma's global clinical trial, because the way that money is providing that. And so if you look into that, what is the revenue that we are seeing into the pharmaceutical market? It is revenue is $4.12 trillion, and the revenue that we have in the North America for the pharmaceutical market, it is 49 increase. And in the 2021, almost 100 billion US dollars have been sold out. So that means you have an opportunity, and that means you have an opportunity at the same time that you also need to understand that you also need to have an understanding is that right, and you do have on the skills. When do you be part of this billions trillions of the market? The day you come out of the college with the freshers, or the way you come up with the experience, knowledge, no matter what you come up with. But it is always important to showcase the skills. So what are the, please speak. So these are some of the top pharmaceutical in globally, where we talk about the pharmaceutical things and all, like what is the industry expectations, or how the clinical trials are happening, and all these things will be discussed during the internal study teams. However, these are some of the top 5 pharmaceutical companies globally who is spending anonymously, who is spending a lot of money to conduct the clinical trials. Like Johnson Johnson, Roche, Pfizer, Novartis, Merck, Amgen, Novartis, all these are the sponsor companies. They are spending their money, and they are expanding the capabilities in different countries to develop their company. Along with that, to make sure that they have a great leader in terms of that. How do we spend money, or what do we spend on the money? So which is a therapeutic area that we are spending money? So like that, there are clinical trials which are happening with a lot of money invested in the clinical trials. And if you look into the trends that we are seeing, that advantage trends that we are here in India is that the cost efficiency, the way you are conducting the clinical trial, the way we are conducting the clinical trial has changed so much after the 2022, because the way the patients are delivering the clinical trial has changed, and the way we are asking the patients to take the vaccination, the way we are asking for that means the reaching out to the patients populations, which tells you that, and which also inform you about the cost efficiency. And the economic drivers, policy supports increasing the investments. So do you have any companies in the India? So these are top 15 pharmaceutical companies, which is considering a lot of trends, and they have made a lot of changes in the clinical research. So what I request you people is that no matter whether you get a corporate job or not, but also even if these are the lab, but this gives the hands-on experience and understanding that how the clinical trials are happening. And also that, for example, let's say that if you look into Sun Pharma, Aurobindo, and look between all these people are spending the 3 days of the calendars. So that means by looking at that, you can understand that it is that how the clinical trial is happening, and it's also that how much we are spending the clinical trial in terms of the financially. That means that it is not to complete the clinical trial, it is to that how effectively building the medication. I've already shown one of the trend, how many clinical trials are happening each year. I've also shown you the trend that how it impacted the pharmacy industry with a positive note. But however, there is a slight change in the how we are conducting the clinical trial. The way we are Okay, so the way we are conducting the clinical trial has changed a lot. Why? Because now we have decentralized clinical trial. Before the clinical trial, the patient used to come to the hospital, but now the patient don't come to the hospital at all because there will be video consultations. The doctor will look at the patient through video and then he will prescribe the medications. But however, now medication will give the doctor will go, the nurse will go to the patient's home and give the medications there. And so this is the decentralized clinical trial. So now it's happening in India so much, and the very big companies having very few clinical trials. Maybe it would take few more years or few more months to come the DCT clinical trials in India. That how the clinical trial is happening and what kind of formulas they should be following, and what are the issues that we are seeing with the particular trends in the clinical research. Okay, so that's about the clinical trials. So that's about the way we are conducting the clinical trials. And also because if you see, look into the money, I'm spending a lot of money. So I'll be looking into what are the trends that I can tell you people that. So because once again, I would like to highlight something here is that the job opportunities, because the case report form before they were using the paper, but now it became the electronic. So that means the technology has changed, and now 99%. In 2015, it was only 70% of the study, but in 2022, 99% of the clinical trial studies are using the electronic format. This is one of the biggest change and the biggest trend that we see in the clinical research. It changed the way the clinical trial is happening. That's one thing. The second thing is the regulatory application. Before they used to pick all the documents and take a lot of time to conduct the clinical trials. But now it's not like that. No matter which country you are in, for example, I'm doing the clinical trial in the US. Now I need to send from the India to the submissions. What I can do is that I can simply click on the electronic submissions. So what are the opportunities it is giving? What are the career opportunities it is giving with these changes and all? And you see that the career opportunities in the contract research organizations, in the training centers, central laboratories, and the pharmaceutical companies, all these things. And if you look at, and you can go as an investigator in the site staff and pharmaceutical companies, that is like in the clinical data management, regulatory affairs, and then also you have the clinical trial supplies management, EDC service providers, where I said electronic data capture EDC, and the site management organization like SMO. All these things have to be considered whenever you choose the career. So what is this operations, medical writing, clinical data management? Under the clinical trial applications, you have a CRAs, that is who go for on-site monitoring visit and see that. And you also have the project managers, you also have the clinical research coordinator, ethics committee, and the clinical trials, and like in the medical writing, we have the pharmacovigilance. The CDM, we have the data management associate, data validations, programming, and electronic data capture services. So these are some of the opportunities and we have. And if you ask me that after COVID has costed $14 trillion of money to us, but after COVID, everyone started mainly looking into what are the drugs that we need for the world, which are the drugs we do not have the medication for the drugs. Then they found that, okay, fine, let's do clinical trial first where we do not have the medication available. So that means, even the way the colleges and encouraging the students to understand the clinical research, because the trends keep on changing, the important issues are keep on changing, and there are also information that giving the information that how well the drug can work on a human body, how well the drug working on those certain I can say that the situations that how the medication is being delivered. So again, one more thing that I would like to mention to people is that no matter what opportunities that you get, or no matter what you understand is that, but having an idea that how the clinical trial is happening, because if you look into the number of the clinical trial that's happening every year, and the billions of dollars that we are getting every year is so much, because the way we are doing the clinical trial has been changed a lot. And also when it comes to ethical principles, when it comes to the conducting of the clinical trial, that it can be, the way we are collecting the data, the way our regulatory submissions, and the way we are giving the approval, the way we are getting the drug into the market very fast. So this is about the clinical research trends and the clinical and the pharma industry, and some of the basics that we spoke about the clinical research. So now I would like to ask, is there any questions that you have? Any questions? Am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any question? Anyone would like to know something about what are opportunities for the freshers? Yes, you have plenty of the